This time on Watchers of Tomorrow, the Borg are back, baby!
Hello, welcome to Watchers of Tomorrow, the sci-fi review and critique show where we're not sure whose contracts are getting renewed. My name is Gepwin. I'm joined as always by my friend and co-host Dr. Isix.
Hi!
And we have reached the end for a minute or so.
Yes, the end of a season.
So we finally gotten to the end of season 3, which is one of the most famous episodes in the entire series.
Indeed. It's tension. There's questions of what are we going to do? There's character stuff going on, and there's lots of phasers and photon torpedoes being fired off.
Yeah, we got set pieces and fights and things. I mean, some of the fights aren't until the next one.
Yes.
So this is Best of Both Worlds. We're doing Best of Both Worlds Part 1 because we talked about whether or not we want to try to squish this into one episode, because this is when they start doing two-parters for their season finales, which they didn't do for the last couple seasons.
It kind of becomes a tradition for TNG and then Voyager to have this sort of thing going on. Less so in DS9, because that might be more of a setting up for the next season sort of tension big episode for their seasons. But
yeah, until DS9 decided that every episode had to be a cliffhanger.
Yes. And so I guess DS9 sort of becomes in the second half a 45-part episode.
Yeah, basically.
But yeah, so as far as two-parters, though, in TNG, this is the big first one, the first two-parter we've had since the Menagerie in the classic series.
Yep.
And yeah.
And what we did the Menagerie is one big episode, mostly because it was one big episode that they just split up for reasons.
And occasionally cut back to court scenes to remind everyone, oh yeah, this is current Enterprise, not past
remember,
Enterprise.
this is has a framing device.
Yes.
But this episode we are doing as each individual episode, mostly because for this particular one, they both have different themes. So we can talk about different things. And then if you want to hear how it ends, you have to listen to the next one, because there's no way you have either already seen this or could just go watch it.
Yes, it's totally impossible. It's lost media. It's like the Marco Polo adventure of Doctor Who from the 60s. Clearly,
Yeah,
this is
so
exactly
you're going to
the
have
same
to come
thing.
back and, listen to our thing, because it's our cliffhanger now.
Haha!
Yeah, so that being said, it is not written by Cliff. There's no one named Cliff involved, because that would have been too easy of a transition. So it's
True.
instead written by Michael Piller, who worked on many of the most famous and popular Next Gen episodes. We've mentioned it before because he worked on Evolution and The Bonding.
And he also wrote a bit for DS9. He's the screenplay guy behind Star Trek Insurrection, and also created Star Trek Voyager, the arcade game.
Not played that.
This is kind of the first time I've heard of it, so...
I never got to play the Voyager first-person shooter, which looked fun. I had one of the Star Trek adventure games, which I think I mentioned a couple episodes back, and it crashed for some reason. The version I had was unstable and always crashed on the final puzzle. So I never actually got to finish it.
That's frustrating. In terms of Star Trek video games, I think the first, quote, Star Trek video game I ran into was either Rescue or the demo for the 25th anniversary game.
Oh, I did have, and if anyone remembers this and can tell me what I was doing wrong, I'd be very curious, because I had a Game Boy Star Trek game that was just Star Trek The Next Generation for the Game Boy. And I didn't have the manual because I got it at a used store. And there was some way that you were supposed to answer hails. And I think that was supposed to be how you solved most of the stuff in the game. but I never figured out what in the world you were supposed to do to answer a hail. So I'd get hailed, wouldn't be able to answer it, and then immediately get attacked, and I had to solve every single problem by firefighting, which I usually lost.
That's a little frustrating.
So there was some way in that game to answer hails, and I never figured out what it was, and I don't own it anymore.
The angry Klingons are hailing, Captain. Sit here for a while.
Basically, yeah.
Don't you want to answer their hail?
Mostly what I did was fight so many Klingons and so many Romulans, and then have to go in and play a weird little mini game where you had to reroute power to repair parts of the ship. And then a weird little mini game where you had to scroll through a map and find people with the transporter.
Rescue everybody.
As far as I remember, it wasn't a terrible game, but I don't know what it had to do with Star Trek. And maybe it would have been better if you talked to people.
Yes. Isn't that what Star Trek's really all about, though?
Generally, yeah.
That if you don't know how to talk to people, things go terrible.
Yep, I think it was pretty accurate. If you don't hail people, you die.
Yeah.
Now we've got only 2 notable guest stars and a bunch of other guest stars who wear clunky makeup and don't get mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got George Murdoch playing Admiral J.P. Hansen. He began acting on stage and played a lot of judges. He's best known for some of his television work. He played Lieutenant Skelton on something, and Barney Miller, and he also played Dr. Sulk in Battlestar Galactica. We have previously seen him because he played God in Star Trek The Final Frontier.
Yes, so the big giant head that is like, bring your ship closer to the planet so I can utilize it.
Excuse me, why does God need a spaceship? I'm very smart.
But I'm actually Admiral Hansen. I've gone back in time and become a giant head. I need to get out of here and get back to my own timeline.
Yeah, there we go. That's what happened to him after these episodes.
Oh, and he was also on something called What a Country. Never heard of it.
And we also have Elizabeth Delaney, who plays Lieutenant Commander Shelby. She previously played Christina Lindsay on the TV show Guiding Light. And then after playing Shelby, she went on to a lot of other TV and movie roles, like appearances on Quantum Leap and Seinfeld, and she played the preschool teacher in Gattaca, which we watched before.
She also was on Charmed for a collection of episodes.
Oh, I didn't find that. That's fun. That was such a terrible show. It has charms, but it was a bad show.
It's one of those ones that, occasionally I hear people talking about it, but it's more of a, yeah, this is a thing that exists.
Well, it was one of those, it's like all those, CW dramas. They're fun to watch. They're like the younger person's soap opera.
So a little light on substance.
Yeah.
If you can even call it what you have there substance.
I started recently watching through the sci-fi original show Resident Alien, and it just reminded me so much of the way that sci-fi started making its own CW shows, but with aliens. So there's a lot of random high school level drama going on in a small town, and also there's an alien.
It's like, one of these might be a much higher priority than, all this other stuff going on, but yeah.
Yeah, there's an alien who may or may not destroy all life on Earth, but also, did you get stood up for a date last night?
Oh gosh, yeah, we got to talk about that for a while.
Anyway, I haven't watched trashy TV in so long. It's kind of refreshing. Everything has to be so serious now.
Speaking of so serious, Shelby does come back, not just for the next episode, but for Star Trek Picard as Admiral Elizabeth Shelby.
Yep, where she royally screws up.
Yep. And I think she dies pretty quickly, right?
Yeah.
So we know her fate. It's to survive this episode, at least.
For some reason, we're never going to get far enough in this thing that we're going to cover Picard. We need to do some kind of special or Patreon or something. I don't know what in the world the writers of Picard thought fan service was. Because there's so many characters they bring back for the only thing they could possibly be thinking is, we'll bring this person back for fan service. and then they kill them immediately.
Kind of, yeah.
It's like, why would you do that?
Though I think Tuvok survived, so, that's nice.
Yeah. Yes, you're not going to kill any of the main people, because what if they need to show up in Star Trek, whatever, the Next Generation Equilibrium thingamabob?
The extra next.
Forget what that thing is. Prodigy. That was the one they're doing with the Voyager stuff.
Yeah, Prodigy I enjoyed. It was mainly for kids, but it was still fun.
Yeah. Anyway, they had their good show, and then they canceled it, and now I don't know what they're going to do.
Yeah. Well, Strange New Worlds is still kind of fun.
Yeah, it's fun, but it's been going downhill fast. They need to pull something really good out of their ass to fix this Gorn situation, or it's going downhill quick.
Yeah. Anyway, back to Best of Both Worlds.
Yeah, anyway. So, the Enterprise is responding to a distress call from an outlying colony. When they arrive, they beam down to the center of town, which is a large crater.
Huh. So, I guess this town is... it's having a big impact on our plot here.
I also have a question about where the rest of this city was.
Yeah.
Because they beam down. They go, "Are you sure we're in the right place?" And he says, "You should be in the center of town." And then they zoom out to reveal that they're standing next to a giant crater.
Yes. Which is a little confusing. And either O'Brien got the coordinates slightly off, or the center of town was actually not very interesting in terms of places.
Yeah. The center of town with, transporter technology is now this slightly off-center place to the side of the city so that you can walk in dramatically.
There we go, yes.
Because it would be kind of off-putting to beam into the very middle of a city.
Now, I do like some of the details on sort of the edge of the crater bit here, because there's pipes and conduit or whatever sort of sticking out the edge. As you do the composite shot with the big crater.
Which also seem to be going nowhere, because,
yes.
There's pipes going off into the distance, but there's nothing else here.
Well, just like in the original series, these are go nowhere, does nothing pipes.
Yep. It's not a bad, it's a good shot, but, if you think about it too hard, it really stops making sense.
Yeah. But, this is an episode where there's a lot of stuff going on and moves on pretty quickly from the dramatic.
Yeah, you just did a big dramatic opening thingy, and then I thought about it too hard and ruined it for everyone.
Oh, gosh.
So they're soon joined by Admiral Hansen and Lieutenant Commander Shelby, who is the Federation's new Borg expert. She's here to see if she can determine whether this attack was committed by the Borg. Because you remember they previously had some stuff about them scooping cities out of the Earth before they decided that the Borg weren't going to fit in that season.
The whole neutral zone episode's yes, there's something mysterious going on here with colonies and outposts vanishing on the edge of our mutual borders here at the Romulans.
Yeah, let's not worry about that anymore. So Starfleet's been preparing for an encounter with the Borg since Q sent them into contact, but so far their best ideas are a month away from implementation.
Well, that kind of's terrible.
Bad timing, that. Yeah.
Yeah. And more generous. In other estimates are even longer than that. So it's we're a little short-teched on this business here. So
yeah, our next thing will be about a month away. Our good ideas, they're 2-3 years out.
If we're lucky.
Shelby thinks she should be able to find a specific energy signature on the planet that she'll be able to use to confirm whether or not the Borg were here. But it's going to be nighttime soon, so they'll go back down in the morning. I guess they don't have flashlights.
Yes. Well, there's also this giant crater here, and you fall down that if you don't, see where you're going.
But you need to be in the crater. So Riker and Shelby leave for Picard and the Admiral to talk a bit. Hansen recommends Shelby as Picard's new first officer, which is news to him because he didn't know he needed a first officer, because Riker hasn't mentioned that he's been offered another command.
Well, this is 2-3 now, I believe.
Yeah. I don't know why they keep doing this. It made sense for this episode because they had a lot of behind-the-scenes contracts getting renewed. Nobody's quite sure what's going to happen shenanigans. Mm-hmm. But
so who knows?
all the rest of the times, you're not going to write him off of the show. What are we doing?
Yes. So, it's the main character syndrome. Can't just cut them out mid-season unless we're a little bit further on in TV.
Yeah. Shelby and Riker have a similar conversation where she announces her intention to replace him and then gets invited to poker.
Shelby, you're going to be on Riker's turf this time. Haha.
Except now, she calls Riker's bluff and beats him
Yeah.
at poker.
Wesley, you should have stuck in. Yeah. Well, she's just beating him at his own game. It's a little symbolic, I think.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. So the next day, Riker arrives at the transporter, not finding Data or Shelby because they beamed down to the planet an hour ago.
This is awkward.
Yeah, Riker follows and gives her a good talking to about how she needs to work inside of the chain of command, but she's completely unapologetic. And so I got up early, saw a storm was coming, and wanted to go before it hit. So, it's still 2 hours away. It doesn't really matter. They finished up their work in under an hour, so you don't have an excuse. And if you wanted to go early, you still could have woken up Riker.
Yes. To let the commander of the spaceship you're on know that you're beaming down to a planet that he's supposed to go down with you with.
Of course, upshot of all of this is you did detect the energy signature, so yeah, the Borg were here.
Well, either that or Data's giving off a little more radiation than usual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they get prepared to try and deal with a massive universe-ending threat, but Picard has some real important things to do by bullying Riker into reconsidering his job postings.
I kind of love this exchange. It's like, why are you here?
Riker then goes to Troy and goes, why am I still here? And she says, you need to figure out what you, William Riker, want. He's like, thank you. I didn't think of that.
Yes. This,
good job.
Unfortunately, so the previous conversation was great. This one's really awkward because it's like, Troy, you're just kind of repeating his questions to you back at him. You're not giving him any advice.
Is the single most realistic therapy session I've ever seen in my life on TV.
It's like, well, I've thought about it, and I don't know. That's why I'm asking you. I know you're the ship's counselor, but you're also like my ex and a friend. There's multiple contexts we could be interacting here with, but you're going all counselor on me. Great.
Yep. You're saying, well, you need to figure out what you want to do. That's why I came in here.
Maybe you should just ask Worf.
Yeah, he would tell you something. Die with honor.
Die with honor by being on the Melbourne. Thanks.
So in engineering, Shelby's having a meeting about how to fight Borg. They theorize that they probably have a non-centralized distributed ship design, like how they work. And they might have many, many redundant systems, which means that you could probably have to destroy about 80% of the ship before it would stop functioning.
So we need like a whole massive fleet here that's prepared to, dig through the Borg's, super duper energy shields and has enough firepower to, level a few small planets, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. And also all of their good weapon ideas are a year out to even finish designing.
Well, maybe if we just throw the entire fleet at it, like just run into the ship.
Yeah, I'm sure that would work. Shelby's ready to start making brand new phasers. Riker tells everyone they need to go to bed, even when Shelby wants to stay up with Data because he doesn't need to sleep. He's like, no, you need to sleep. Go sleep, damn it.
Data can do all the amazing things he does all the time without you, Shelby. Go to bed.
Yeah. So now they've turned it again. He has to order her to bed like a little kid.
You're up early. You're trying to go to bed late. Oh, come on, Shelby.
So the Admiral calls to inform them that a ship sent out a distress call after contact with a cube-shaped ship, and that abruptly ended.
Yeah, I think the transport or whatever it was mentioned. It was actually mentioned in a previous episode. So sucks for them.
No, reoccurring transport people
that are off screen entirely. They died.
So the Enterprise is en route. The next nearest ship is 6 days away. So good luck, everybody.
Yeah, the Federation seems to have some unknown number of ships, and they're sufficiently spread out that everyone's at least a week away generally.
Yeah, well, space is pretty big.
Yes.
Unless you're in one of those places with 15 pulsars and 3 parsecs like we had last episode.
Yeah. Space is apparently as big as it needs to be in the most inconvenient or convenient ways possible.
Yep. So Shelby has upgraded the defenses to slightly better shields that might hold up for a minute or two, and slightly better phasers that probably should maybe but probably won't actually work.
If only we had a really smart Ferengi here to invent metaphasic shields for us.
Yeah. But no, you don't get meta whatevers until Voyager when they just start making up more science words.
Well, there's actually an episode in TNG where a Ferengi scientist invents metaphasic shields, and there's a whole plot involving him being murdered and things like that. But it comes in handy later as in another end of season cliffhanger to let them hide inside the corona of a star.
Oh, yeah. 'Cause that one was weird.
Yeah. And then in Voyager, of course, it's like, yes, this prison on a planet has metaphasic shields for some reason. Okay.
Yeah, because it's a word. I like when they get to the end of Voyager and they've just invented, like, respawning battle armor. And
yes. There's a reason I have a fan theory that the entirety of Voyager is just the Doctor's interpretation of events, and since he's not an engineer, a lot of things are just like, something like this, maybe?
Yeah, so the rest of Voyager is just the second half of that episode where everybody was remembering Voyager attacking the planet wrong.
Kind of.
And now it's just the Doctor remembering everything wrong.
Alternatively, it's his holonovel, as eventually republished back on the Federation side of the galaxy.
So anyway, back here, they've detected a ship on an intercept course. They've engaged the Borg.
Oh. Yeah, the music here is actually kind of awesome.
They give Picard all the best lines in this episode.
All the best lines.
Then Picard is being hailed by name.
Well, that's a little weird. How do they know him?
The Borg want him specifically to surrender, or they'll destroy the ship.
All right, Riker, this is time for you to stand up, be a little bit more captain-y. What do you think about this thing here? Wait a moment. You might want my job. Never mind. No.
So they get their tractor beam on the shields, which gets through them pretty quick despite the upgrades. The phasers are not doing anything despite the upgrades.
We've delayed things 5 seconds. Okay.
Shelby decides that maybe randomly fluctuating the phasers would be a good idea, and they are able to destroy the tractor beam that way and get out of there. They hit warp 9. The Borg follow, not, a little lazily. You're not getting away is the upshot here.
Yes.
So they hide in a nebula that'll keep the Borg busy looking for them for a little while because it's full of, sensor blocking woobly gas.
And we got some reused special effects from Wrath of Khan suddenly here. It's a different nebula, but, it's doing the same thing.
So while they're waiting, Shelby gets to run another Borg prep meeting. They found out that one of the phaser frequencies they use caused a system-wide drop in the Borg power grid. So if they can put out a massive blast of energy at those frequencies, they might be able to disable the cube.
Well, that's kind of cool. A critical flaw has been located. We just need some X-Wing pilots now, right?
Yes. The Borg don't consider a smaller force to be a real threat, or they'd have a tighter defense.
Spheres versus cubes, very similar, right?
So unfortunately, the only thing that they've got that's going to put out as much power as they need is a deflector dish, which they can modify, but it's going to burn out the shields and the engines the first time they use it.
Now, the main deflector dish, as we discover throughout Star Trek after this, is in fact magical. But this time it's like, we don't really have anything else. And this thing, I suppose?
And they also want to separate the saucer section because they haven't done that in a season or so.
Well, specifically Shelby wants to do that.
Yeah, and Riker goes, no, too risky. But then Shelby goes straight to the captain.
With that very idea.
And Picard goes, yeah, you're right. It wasn't a great idea for right now. It might be good to fall back. Why are you here?
Riker's having none of this here.
Yeah, Riker's pissed that she went behind his back. And she goes, you get out of my way because I'm the one who's going to make the real big girl decisions here. You just want to play it safe.
Then Riker, suddenly back in 10 forward, facing Troy. Am I playing it safe?
Yeah.
I don't know. Are you playing it
These
safe?
cuts with this whole Riker storyline. So later on, Gaiden fetches Picard in 10 forward at night, where he's touring the ship because, you take a tour of the ship before battle, or a hopeless battle, as she points out.
And there's some chatter about Admiral Nelson, the whole Trafalgar business there where he died.
Now, Picard muses what it's like to live right before the end of your civilization. Great, no one would know that.
Well, we could still keep Star Trekking, but with the Federation destroyed, that well, we're going to be kind of lost without like orders to go look at things.
Yeah, how will they know which nebula to explore? Guinan knows this isn't the end of humanity because her people were scattered across the universe by the Borg, and they're still here. It's like humanity will still be here, even if there's just a few of them roaming around or something.
Yeah, there's lots of random colonies out there, and only half of them are going to get zapped by crystalline entities in the future.
Yeah, which is such a... I don't know. I'm sorry if you are one of the people who's comforted by this, anybody, but like I've never understood this as a comforting statement. Don't worry, they can't kill absolutely all of you. That okay, great. Thanks.
I'd rather they not kill any of us, honestly,
Yeah.
because the whole thing, life is precious and all that sort of business here, and also, it's me.
So the ship's hit by something or other because the Borg have started using a magnetic guided charge thingy, and now the shields are back down to 40%, so they need to leave.
Well, this sucks. The Borg have adapted to nebulas.
Yeah, they adapt to anything.
It takes some time sometimes.
So as soon as they're out of the nebula, the Borg grab the ship with a tractor beam, and then they beam onto the bridge where Worf shoots one, but then they adapt to the new phasers because that didn't take long.
Yeah.
Bounces off shields. They knock aside Riker and Worf, grab Picard, and beam away.
Well,
That's all they wanted.
I guess they're going to destroy the ship now because Picard didn't surrender.
Right? They just leave, and Riker orders them to follow. So they
Very well then.
they don't follow through on their threats. I guess they don't need to.
I'm starting to think these Borg people might not be honest.
Yeah. So they are running top speed to Sector 001, which happens to be Earth because we're still very conceited in the future.
Yes. For some aliens, it's the Arcanus sector over here. It's like, oh, that's kind of cool. You actually give it a name. While the Federation's like, we're just going to start naming sectors via, I guess grid coordinates or something like that. And, we're going to start with number 1 instead of 0 anyway. And, we're just going to start here at Earth because that's where the headquarters for the, Starfleet
Yeah,
is.
because it's the most important planet ever.
Yeah.
Never mind all of you who have had warp travel for thousands of years.
Never mind Vulcans or, the Andorians over here. You guys, your planet's important, but not as important.
This is the Federation in Star Trek is like, it's like the opposite. It's the exact opposite of the Mass Effect world. Because in Mass Effect, humans are the new kids who are like the least technologically advanced, newest into space, and everyone shits on them for it, and they're not very well respected. And in Star Trek, humans are the newest people to get space flight, and they're in charge of everything.
Yeah. Well, there might be a certain amount of, well, if they're willing to do the work for it, I guess let's let them do it. But in terms of like having a organized government of sorts, yeah, that's kind of weird.
So we're on the Borg ship with Picard, where he is taken to a balcony of the cube because they have cube balconies.
Like, we need to all talk at you at once, so get on the balcony.
It's interesting with how the whole thing is like they're efficient and don't care about anything else because, they're all hive mind and don't need creature comforts, etc. Efficiency. Most of our ship is empty space.
There might be some tighter bits here and there, dark corridors, or places where there's just lots of alcoves and weird angles to each other. But other areas, it's like completely open, But I guess if you're going to be assimilating stuff, having some space to store things as you do that would make sense. But couldn't you just have a big hangar somewhere in the central section?
Yeah, they never really show that as an assimilation thing, that they just get sucked into the middle of the ship. A little bit in Voyager, but like that would be cool if you just like wound up floating in the middle of this empty cube space getting your ship torn apart.
Yeah, just all sorts of weird beams start, zapping you and, cutting up your what's left of your ship here and all that sort of stuff.
But no, it's just a big empty balcony so that they can have a cool balcony shot.
But hey, it's still a cool shot.
So they've discovered that humanity seems to respect a central authority figure, so they've decided that they need to get a human voice to tell the humans they're about to be subjugated.
I don't know. These Borg folks seem to already be liars. I'm not quite sure this makes sense, though.
Yeah, it's a weird conceit.
Yeah. It kind of makes sense for the flow of the episode, but in terms of, how the Borg have acted until this point, it does seem a little weird. You could just make one of your drones like, this is Bob. Bob is your new leader.
Also, what's the deal? Like, they certainly don't seem to think that this is going to make humans suddenly just play along, just respect them. And be like, oh, well, I see you have a strong authority figure. We'll definitely give in now.
Though, given that the Borg are all about acquiring their information via assimilation, they could have some really bad information about humanity and the Federation in general.
That's true. They assimilated some weak-willed people on the outskirts. Like, well, these people would have given up if we'd just told them to more strongly.
Yeah. And, this one had a terrible book about, authoritarianism, and clearly that's what we need to be going with here to assimilate.
Yeah, that's why they were
quickly.
Weird outskirts colonies. They were the authoritarian branch of the government.
Yeah, we, later do run into Tasha's Yar's home planet, which is apparently a human colony that's just kind of rejected the Federation entirely. So there's probably planets like that where it's like, we don't like what's going on with the Federation. We're going to set up our own colony over here and hopefully don't get assimilated by the Borg.
Yeah, we're going to get that to that one a little bit. It seems like anything that's not directly part of the Federation is awful.
Yeah.
So, Tasha's home planet is Necromunda for some reason.
So the Borg, fan theory, they got bad info.
So the Enterprise can only keep up with the Borg for another couple of hours, so they need to turn the power to their engines off so that they can make them stop. And then, they can use their weapon, because they need all of the power from the warp engines to use their thing, so they have to get everybody to stop and hold very still so that they can use their new super weapon.
And I do rather like that this is a dilemma. It's like, we only have so much power. We have a super ship with the Enterprise here, the most advanced ship in the fleet, but yet, even then, we have to make a hard decision about where we put our power supplies.
Which they always do with the Borg, which is nice. It's like, you have to use absolutely everything, the complete limits of everything that you have. Like, you can maybe damage them a little bit if you shoot your warp core at them.
Yes. Which I guess they could technically do.
Riker decides he's going to lead a team over there and get the captain out. Before he can go, Troy points out that it's inappropriate for the captain to be on an away mission.
Even the acting captain. So, you get to stay here.
So, time for Shelby to go with Worf, Data, and Crusher. They've got new phasers that randomly rotate frequencies every time they shoot, but they'll probably only get a few shots off before they stop working.
But that's good enough for Crusher.
Don't have, even this far in the future, this sounds like they don't have true random number generation.
That's a failing we'll have to overcome someday.
Well, I just saw that they did that weird quantum experiment that proved there actually is randomness.
We'll just use that. Unless the Borg had defeated quantum mechanics.
Then the Borg might have defeated quantum mechanics.
Drat. Foiled again.
I mean, there's that minor plot line in Stargate SG-1 where they meet the super advanced aliens and she's explaining quantum physics. He's like, oh, you still believe in quantum physics. That's cute.
Yeah, it's a good model of a theory, but it's not really what's going on. Thanks. Could you help us with that? No.
So also, when they encountered the Borg before, they kind of ignored them.
Mm-hmm.
Until they considered them to be a threat, which, sure.
Yeah. If the Borg, it's like, we're going to get around to assimilating you at some point, but we don't know what you're doing on our ship now. And it doesn't really matter what you're doing on the ship unless you start, causing problems. So,
So they beam on board, and indeed, they are ignored. They find some node-looking things. Crusher speculates that they might be able to shoot them and make them stop. Like, if you get hit with a mosquito, they'll stop to scratch it.
And, if you do it a lot, then maybe they'll, slap themselves silly, right?
Yeah. They also pick up the captain's comm badge, and they find his uniform in a drawer, because Borg drawer.
This is where they used to keep the babies, but now they're keeping their outfits in there. That means Picard's running around naked.
Yep. That was my next note. He's naked here somewhere.
Oh, a slight aside. The reason Crusher is on the away team is not because they foresee her being necessary for the plot, but because Gates McFadden wanted to shoot a phaser.
Nice. Yeah, she never gets to do anything.
Yes.
So it's time for them to get the fuck on because they only have 17 minutes of warp power left. So they need to get this thing stopped. They return to where they beam in and start shooting little triangular node things in the ceiling, which does wake up the Borg. They're able to take out 4 or 5 before they adapt to the new phasers. But it worked, and the Borg have to drop out of warp. And then they see Picard.
They've shot our pyramids.
Yeah, but they're inverted pyramids. They're like those. They're like the future version of those weird little like light well diamond things they had on boats.
Oh, yeah.
I always loved the look of those things.
You do.
They see Picard, and he is behind a bunch of Borg, and they can't get near him, so they have to return to the ship.
Well, this sucks. Can't rescue Picard here.
Yeah.
What,
so they get
now?
back. Riker knows they don't have time to send anyone back to get Picard because the Borg are regenerating power, and they're going to be back to warp any minute. Shelby says, no, wait, we have to consult the Admiral before we decide to shoot them because Picard's still on that ship. There's no time.
Mm-hmm.
No time to try to rescue Picard. These are where you have to make the big decisions, Shelby.
Yes. So, it's time for Riker to show you up for once, I guess.
So they are hailed, and Picard appears on screen with his little laser pointer doodah and his Borg makeup. He goes, I am Locutus of Borg.
You're looking a little bit more like Borg in the future than Borg so far here with the sort of zombified look going on here. It's kind of
He's
unsettling.
the model for future Borg.
Yeah.
Then Riker orders them to fire.
Dun 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 dun.
And that's it. Cliffhanger.
Yep. The end. So, Riker has finally got around to having an excuse to get rid of Picard and become captain of the Enterprise himself. Hooray!
Yeah, that was the whole thing. That was the entire thing. Also, I was reading through the production notes on this thing, and we had no idea how we were going to solve this. That's future writers' problems.
Yes. And we'll get to that when we get to that episode. But there's a number of things that they ended up doing for that one that follow through from what you have here, and others are could have gone a completely different way, quite easily. It all kind of comes down to who's going to still be on the show next season. What if Picard dies in this attack?
Yeah, you could see still a very interesting through line of the show where Picard becomes a reoccurring villain.
It could be kind of a fun alternative take on the rest of TNG. They maybe figure out a way to deter the Borg, and a heavily damaged cube flies away, unable to regenerate any further at this point, and but Picard, aka Locutus, remains and is there to shake his fist at Riker and the Federation, and we'll be back someday.
Yeah, he could have just showed up, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
Should have been cool. I think this episode's really interesting on the way that they're obviously doing a little bit of a weird thing because they want to make a Riker-centric episode to maybe prepare him if they need to be captain next season, and set up the new first officer if they need somebody for next season. And the way that they do it is so odd because the way that they've written Shelby's character is I can't wrap my head around the gender of it all. It's very odd. Because she's kind of written like a very annoying upstart male character.
A bit, yeah.
But one of the things that I sort of wrote out is there's still a weird sexist joke in the beginning of the episode. Because the Admiral and Picard are talking. He's like, "Oh, you have looks like you got a crush here or something." He's like, if I was younger." It's that's weird. You're being weird.
Yeah, Hanson, you're a little creepy here. Hopefully you have a terrible fate in the near future. Spoilers.
Like the way that she is written is somewhat very antagonistic, very in your face, has this entire story arc that is I'm going to be the young upstart and be headstrong and say I'm going to make the tough decisions and you should just get out of the way, old man. And then when the tough decisions come up, she goes, no, let's run back and ask the Admiral for advice.
So your confidence has been crushed, Shelby. It's time for Riker to show off his instead.
Which is kind of interesting because I can't figure out what they're trying to say with that exactly. They're trying to set up this for Riker to show that he's capable and ready to make the tough decisions, which would make a little bit of sense for a one-off character, but for someone that you're trying to set up as an actual competent first officer,
it maybe doesn't work so well.
Well, it can work fine. I just can't figure out exactly what they're trying to say. She's a little bit of a mixed character, and I can't work my head around what they're doing with it exactly.
Well, I guess there is maybe an argument to be had that she is being introduced here, but she's also starting to evolve as a character. That maybe she sees Riker as being in her way at the start, and so being a little bit in your face specifically to him, and some of her decisions. It's like, oh, I have a perfectly reasonable explanation for this, but I'm going down on my own with it, Data early. That's really me kind of backhand, showing you up that you can't really tell me what to do because we are at the same level. But by the end of the episode, she's in such a panic that it's like, this is how I would do things, if I was in charge here. And maybe they're not the best decision here. And I still need someone who is, quote, captain material to direct me and limit me in terms of my over-eagerness, my zealousness here. And just my zealousness here is going the wrong direction.
I think that's the whole crux of it. Because, the way that they've written it is so strange. Because if you were doing that with a male character, it would be a pretty paint-by-numbers storyline. This guy thinks he's better than Riker, and then it turns out that he's not, and he's put in his place, and Riker's the proper dominant male, and so he's in charge, etc. But I can't quite tell if they've just completely gender swapped it to the point where it doesn't really matter anymore, or if now they're doing something mildly sexist with it. Because now they're showing that she's fighting really hard to be taken seriously and do her job and be great. But when, the chips are down, she's still, needs this guy to take over for her.
I feel like they were attempting the first of those two, but the alternative reading is right there, too. So it's sort of one of those things where it's almost a choose your own which one it is.
Yeah, it's one of those weird ones. They did this a lot in these 80s, 90s things. I don't know if you ever saw any of the original She-Ra cartoon.
Oh yeah. It's been a while since so I don't remember much of it, but yeah.
They gender swapped the characters so lazily that they fell backwards into feminism. Because they just let She-Ra be He-Man and do exactly the same things with no weird gender essentialist crap in it. And then she has this little sidekick guy who is definitely gay and just follows her around like a little simp the entire time. Because, you just have the little sidekick character, and they worried so little about writing them as actual characters that they accidentally made something that's actually fairly progressive.
Yeah.
And I feel like that they kind of were going for that here, but because they so fully ignored the gender parts of the thing, they wound up accidentally doing something bad that they didn't want to do.
Yes, something a little uncomfortable that unintended consequences of their writing choices.
I do think it's even bringing her in to be the new first officer and then having all of the contracts work out so you return to the status quo, which makes sense from a TV writing business perspective. they've been trying to get a female first officer on one of these shows since the original pilot, and they don't have one until we get to Strange New Worlds.
Yep. Which is just a remake of the original pilot.
Yeah, so finally we get one. We had a female captain before we got a female first officer.
Mm-hmm. It would have been, I guess, interesting, or I guess way more interesting, like on Voyager, if, as like maybe at some end of season shenanigans or whatever, Chakotay is actually like demoted, and like Torres or something like that gets put in her, his place there, and this could cause some interesting Maquis versus Starfleet stuff, but with the Maquis as the first officer, still there's like that gets kind of prevented from going into anything dangerous for the plot there.
Well, I think that Janeway and B'Elanna would have had a much better dynamic as first officer.
Yes.
And also, that would be great if they still wrote the weird, like, we can't decide if she wants to hook up with her first officer shit.
Yeah, that would have been a lot of fun.
I think they should have done that and kept the weird romantic tension.
And if B'Elanna still starts getting interested in Tom Paris there, you could have a whole love triangle thing there, and all sorts of interesting plot opportunities. Guys, come on, go back in time and chase the show.
I mean, come on, why are we still doing monogamy this far in the future?
Mm-hmm. It's a good question.
What are we doing?
Yeah, the Denolians said it was okay, so we can do it now.
Yeah. Every now and then they make some like random nods towards how they've gotten more progressive on relationships and sex, but they never really commit to it.
Yeah. It's more window dressing than anything.
Yeah. They never actually want to give us anything.
But back to the episode. So I guess for me, Shelby, I'm not sure if she could have really recovered from the events of this episode to being Riker's first officer in the long run. Maybe a sort of like one season, arc where she learns to play well with others finally, and goes and becomes a captain or something like that afterwards. Or alternatively, she completes the part 2 of this epic here, and it's like, all right, so maybe you were kind of right about how needling and pointless I was being, in terms of my ambition here, Riker. Thanks for tempering me out a little bit, but I still want to be a first officer. I just don't want to be yours.
Well, I think they would have brought her in as first officer and tempered her down a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's probably what would have happened, but not my first choice there. Maybe Data could become first officer,
Yeah, I do think that would have been a lot more interesting. It's kind of, I think that the thing that I don't like about this episode, whether it's still one of the best episodes, but the dueling dynamic that they have of her both being the introduced new character to be a threat to Riker and the Borg expert. Because you could still have some interesting stuff with the Borg expert, who you have to listen to your Borg expert, and they don't really have great ideas, but they're still helpful because they know more than anybody else, even though they don't know very much.
Yes. It's also a little weird that this Borg expert is more experienced with the Borg than the people that have been on a Borg ship before.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway. But then she's also maybe had plenty of time to like sit down and go over all the details while, Riker and everybody else on the Enterprise are like, we got like stuff to do.
Yeah, she gets to sit down at headquarters and study stuff. Which, I feel like that's the vibe they were going for, and that would have worked fine going into an actual first officer thing. But it didn't. They didn't really make it work out. Having the headstrong, book smart character is like, I know what I'm doing because I've studied it, but up against the person who's not headstrong because they actually do know what they're doing. that works out. And I think that's the dynamic that they were trying to hit, but they didn't hit it super well.
Yeah, I guess maybe it's a victim of trying to do too many things at once with, unfortunately, a limited amount of time with a lot of stuff going on in this episode. So,
which they always do. They always do too much and then try to wrap everything up in 5 minutes at the end.
Though, in this case, the 5 minutes at the end is more like 2 minutes, where everyone tells Riker, "No, you can't shoot the ship," but Riker's like, "No, I'm going to shoot the ship."
Yeah, which is like, that's the whole power dynamic thing of this episode. Because, you have Shelby coming in to challenge his power dynamic. He doesn't want to be in charge, but then it's thrust on him, and that makes him the real good leader. And he's such a good leader that he's willing to sacrifice his friend in order to save humanity.
Because throughout this entire thing, it is very clear that we are not ready for the Borg. The Borg are a existential threat. We either stop them here or we can't stop them.
Yeah, so you have to make the tough decisions.
And it sucks for Picard, I suppose, but he's already probably lost his entire self into the machine there. So
casualty of war.
Sort of a little aside here. This is the Borg kind of changing their MO a little bit here. Though, I do think that they've been assimilating people for a while before this.
Because otherwise where would all these people have come from?
Yes. That, the whole reproduction via, putting babies in drawers situation. It's like, there's probably just assimilated the kids there. Whatever. The taking in their technology is like priority number one, but when they need more people, then they go all in and assimilate a planet or two. And so I guess in terms of what we've been exposed to with the Borg here, this might seem like a new behavior, but also they really don't know much about the Borg in total. They're not exactly people to talk to.
Which is kind of a good way to handle, it doesn't feel like they've changed this stuff, even though they definitely did, which is interesting, because we don't know that much about the Borg to begin with. So when they do retcon things, it doesn't feel as much like they did, because it is in fact not completely inconsistent with the fact that we don't know a lot about them. So when they show up, we are told very explicitly by someone who's encountered them before what they do. They aren't very interested in you. They want to grab your technology and just steal stuff, etc. And then the further we go, they introduce more of the things to make them actually scary, and then they ruin them, and then they make them scary again.
A little bit of back and forth. But I would also argue that given the aspect of the Borg that we are really being exposed to in this episode, that they are very adaptive, that they that they are willing to change what they're doing in a very active sort of way in order to get the greatest advantage. Having the Borg behavior change over time would kind of make sense. And who knows, maybe there's a certain level of they don't have much control over how they evolve, that they keep getting, interacting with external stimuli, and how they sort of react to that is beyond conscious control to a degree. Yes, they are super smart, they got the hive mind there, but if your, sort of Borg prime directive is to, expand and, acquire technology and seek perfection, etc., some of that which we'll get a little bit later, then, how you do that is maybe going to be, I suppose, almost a weakness, in that you have this thing that you are unwilling to compromise with, and so you can make changes that you might not otherwise, because they are the ones that get you closer to, quote, perfection.
I think that the main thing they've done with what they're doing in here is really interesting to me story-wise, because they started with the Borg as this just existential threat we didn't know a lot about. They're basically just there to be like, you can't negotiate with them because they won't talk to you, and they are stronger than you, and that's the only things we need.
Mm-hmm.
And this one, they take over Picard largely because of the story convenience where they might need to get rid of Picard, so they have to get him out of the picture in a way that's reasonable for him to come back if they need to.
Yeah.
So they can't just kill him. But then by doing that, they created the creepiest thing about them, which is that they might steal you specifically and not kill you.
They might turn all your friends and family into, well, one of them, and now they're coming after you.
And then they sort of become this zombie thing. But then they can't decide what to do with that later.
Yeah.
Because you have this really interesting through line where the Borg are set up to be the anti-Federation.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Federation is partnership through cooperation and mutual understanding and celebrating everyone's differences. And the Borg are, we're going to make everyone exactly the same through conformity. And
they going to be put to work as part of the machine.
And they can't quite figure out what which metaphor they're trying to use. Is this communism? Is this office work? Is this the 90s cubicle culture? Like, what are we doing? Like, they can't quite pin down where they're trying to get this, like, scary metaphor. And so it keeps evolving into weirder and weirder shit. And eventually you get to the fucking Queen thing because you need a singular villain for a movie. And then you get to the Voyager stuff, which, like, I do love Voyager. I'm not one of the weird Voyager cynics, but I will agree that they turned the Borg from the entire Federation can't take out one cube to Voyager is taking out 3 or 4 a week.
Kinda, yeah. Got a little ridiculous. I could maybe hand wave that Voyager's slowly picking up a weird advanced technology as they go, but shouldn't the Borg also be doing that?
I mean, it's just it's just written wrong. You could have exactly the same thing, and they have to narrow escape several times instead of we can blow them up now.
Yeah.
At least come up with new and novel ways to blow them up every time.
Yes. Well, I suppose in terms of the larger story here of the Borg, the one question might be, it's like, okay, so why are they going to Earth specifically? And I think the answer to that is actually weirdly obvious, but it's not really explicit at this point in the in Star Trek in general, because we kind of pick up as time goes by that Earth might be paradise, it might be a post-scarcity society, but is also heavily populated. And so if there's like 10, 15 billion people on Earth at this point in time, that's a tempting target if you are going about looking for people to be assimilated to grow your numbers. While like Vulcan's like 4 billion, and like who knows about any other alien race here. They could have, hundreds of millions on a planet, and they still might be a major power that's, very relevant to, interstellar politics here. But there's Earth with so many billions and billions of people there just hanging out, being happy, I guess. So it would be a very tempting target for a species that, or I guess a force, an entity, whatever you want to call the Borg, really, to go harvesting.
I think what is kind of interesting is it's a very non-Borg move in a way that would make sense to happen after they assimilate Picard, or maybe whatever's gone on to make them assimilate Picard, because it's a very human way of thinking about stuff. One, it has to be Earth because everybody who's watching lives on Earth. Oh my God, yes. I know that place.
It's like, what if they're not going to Earth, but they're going to the Tellarite homeworld?
Yeah, we don't care about them. Yeah, but also, it's a very like cut off the head to win the war strategy, which makes sense from a human perspective when you're thinking about combat and the way that we handle things. But as far as the Borg are convinced, no one part of the whole is more important than any other part, which makes the way that they think about stuff seem a little odd on this. I agree with what you're saying with like the like, bolster your numbers thing, but that's a long way to go, apparently, if they're starting at the edge and going to the middle.
Yes.
And skipping everything in between.
They're probably aware that the Federation and humans in particular are pretty good at adapting themselves, and so they're maybe wanting to hit things up before they get out adapted accidentally. But I guess another way to, as you're saying there, that there might have been a change of mind in the Borg upon assimilating Picard. Because, if they start off, it's like, oh, we could maybe convince these people to join us if we just have a figurehead that can, it's like, yeah, it's great in here. Sort of communications. But once they assimilate Picard, it's like, well, that plan might still be in effect, but we need to maybe change a few things. And instead of, going about and being all friendly to random colonies, maybe hit things up on Earth directly there. Because they're like, oh, we now know a fair bit more about the Federation, how it works, their strategy, their strong points, their weak points, etc., etc. We go to Earth, assimilate a bunch of people, then we can, go to Mars, all the shipyards there, take those over, and start turning out new Borg cubes, locally. It'll be great.
At this point, I think it's kind of interesting because we don't even know if there's more Borg cubes.
Mm-hmm.
It would be slightly interesting if there wasn't. I think the Borg would have been slightly more interesting if they just kept building onto the one ship and they didn't turn into this weird half a galaxy spanning empire. Yeah.
a singular unstoppable starship that is it is its own threat. If it comes in, you're going to have a bad time. But there's only one of them, so as long as you keep an eye on it, you can maybe avoid it, and maybe that's what some species have done.
Yeah, it would be interesting. That would have been interesting, and that would have made a lot more sense for Voyager being able to avoid things.
Yes. It's like, maybe there's, 3 or 4 different Borg ships, but each one operates differently, has adapted differently, and this is the one that they've met previously, and there might be a different one, in fact, but they have a very similar structure, but they are completely disconnected. They are uninterested in interacting with each other, due to various reasons. And so there's maybe 3 or 4 of these things flying around the galaxy, and you could avoid them, you could try to fight them, but each one has its sort of strengths and weaknesses and its own MO in terms of, what it assimilates and what it doesn't.
So now you've just designed an interesting 4X space game.
Dodge the Borg, and maybe you'll survive till the end.
Or be the Borg, and you only have one ship and one manufacturing thing, but you can, eat an entire planet.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it reminds me of that time I played Stellaris as a singular planet. Still ended up owning half the galaxy. Just no one was living out there.
Build tall. Was that after the mercantile expansions?
It was near that point in time. I don't remember if it was before or after, though.
Many a true nerd did that a little bit ago. Anyway, now we're talking about video games again, which usually means it's time for us to get to other things.
Like some sort of Galaxy's favorite game show!
Oh, no, you got to say it.
Ha-ha!
Which means I have to go, hooray!
Hooray! Hey everybody, welcome to the Galaxy's favorite game show, where we've changed things up slightly, and I apparently am missing a hand here, grafting something onto me. But anyway, first off, our prize is for our various contestants here. We've got menacing geometry. We go to the Borg. They're back and still keeping it up, Gepwin. What do they get here? I'm getting more things grafted to me.
The Borg win one of those child's toys where you have to put things in the different holes with different shapes because they only know the cube one.
Yes, it goes in the square hole.
It's also probably that video where they keep putting everything in the cube hole.
Yes, it goes in the square hole. So they'll be either infuriated or delighted by that, I think. Our second prize is the Worf effect, which goes to Worf, Riker, and kind of the entire Enterprise entirely. We're having a bad time when confronted with Borg directly because, they really don't stand up very well. What do they win, Gepwin?
They win the data effect, because that's going to be next episode, but we do see that Data is indeed stronger than Worf and should maybe be stepping in a little more often.
Yes. It's like, but I'm not a security officer. I can't go around and punch people. Well, maybe you should. Our third prize is the Cyborg Picard prize, which goes to Picard because he's becoming a little bit more like me with the cyborgness here. There's something doing something to my eye, Gepwin. What does Picard win?
Picard wins a copy of Cyberpunk, the role-playing game, and he can just get chromed up and get really, really strong and just try to avoid cyberpsychosis over there, Picard.
Mm-hmm. Otherwise, the Cyber Psycho Squad will come after you. Anyway, our final prize is the New Blood prize, which goes to Shelby because she's eager for motion. And hey, Riker, she might be better. It might be a better first officer material than you. Haha! So move on already. Become a captain and stuff. Shelby is here and it's here to stay for sure. Yeah, totally. What does she win, Gepwin?
She wins the old spin-off shows because we needed more spin-off shows in the 90s when they could do stuff like New Bloods and have like a whole new young gang that was going to go out and do cool spaceship things instead of now where New Bloods would mean probably Kirk and Spock again, but younger this time.
Yeah, it's like they're at the academy and, not quite captaining yet and stuff. And they're new and young and radical guys, totally. And you must join us, Gepwin, with the rest of the game show. Take us away before I start assimilating people.
Yes, thank you all for joining us on the galaxy's favorite game show where resistance is futile.
We are excited, Gepwin.
Yes, because we didn't actually talk about what we're doing next time.
Yeah.
So we haven't decided whether we're going to do this next part 2 episode or if we're going to do our normal mid-season thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those.
So either I'm going to be a cyborg next episode or we're going to be doing something else entirely. So,
yeah, but also, see, this was not bad planning where we forgot to have this discussion before we recorded. This is just another additional cliffhanger on the existing cliffhanger. So now you get to have a double cliffhanger.
Dun, dun, dun. So how should I do the outro then?
I don't know.
Well, I got a couple options here, but I suppose next time on Watchers of Tomorrow. From this time forward, you will listen to us. You have been listening to Watchers of Tomorrow, a podcast on science fiction media. Find and listen to Watchers of Tomorrow on Podbean, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, Digital Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Google Play, and many more places where podcasts can be found. If you enjoyed our podcast, make sure to subscribe for more. And make sure to rate your experience or leave us a review. You may find Gepwin on YouTube as Gepwin and on Pillow Fort. You may find I, Dr. Isix, on YouTube and Blue Sky. Music is Waveform and Maury's Principle, both by DRKRN, and Quirky Dog by Kevin MacLeod. Check out the Watchers of Tomorrow Discord channel. You may also find Watchers of Tomorrow on Tumblr. Make sure to share the experience of Watchers of Tomorrow with your friends, loved ones, enemies, alien overlords, and your doppelganger from the mirror dimension. Have a good day, and ahead, warp factor heckin' fast.